Hello, everyone. As always, Gordon Causey coming live and unscripted. Thank you for watching. It's now the 1st of December, late in the evening, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as so often happens, I'm joined by Candy, who's going nuts because she wants this, her treat. Sit, shake, lay down, speak, speak. There we go. She had a good speak tonight. Hopefully she'll maybe be one person watching, probably a bot. That's usually the case. I wanted to talk tonight about the reporting that's going on. I have a huge issue with the quality, if I can use that word, of journalism in Canada and the United States, in much of the Western world. And I've linked down below a clip that's here on YouTube of an NBC Nightly news segment reporting on something that happened in the West Bank. I believe the name of the city is Jenin, in what is referred to as the occupied Palestinian territories, the West Bank. And before I dissect and tell you what issues I have with the reporting, I want to stress something. Personally, myself, I have not had TV in the house, no cable, no satellite hookup for over 10 years. Basically, I've been largely cut off from mainstream reporting, at least television, for 10 plus years. And I was grateful for that fact, particularly during the COVID era. I did not see the news reporting, or I didn't see much of it. When COVID was going on, I did get some TV reporting. My workplace was a radar station that was 24/7, 365, and during what I will call daytime business hours, Monday to Friday, 8 or so in the morning until 3, 4 in the afternoon. During that time frame, we had a TV, a large screen TV, big flat screen hooked up on the wall, and we were required to only have news or current affairs type programming up. So if any higher ups came in, we weren't watching comedy videos or movies or TV shows or things of that nature. It was just background noise, current affairs type programming or news. And I saw the reporting during COVID, and I considered it incredibly irresponsible, incredibly geared toward driving an emotional response. Dun, 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 dun. More terrifying news from Bob Cage in Ontario as the deadly coronavirus is rampaging through the Pinecrest nursing home with another 3 victims claimed or whatever. And it was always geared toward driving an emotional response, at that time fear, trying to drive fear into the population. And I would regularly walk by the television at work and go, "Oh, give me a break," or stronger language than that, "Oh, off," with the irresponsible, horrible reporting that was going on. Anytime I see news programming gearing itself towards driving an emotional response, I think it more properly belongs under the heading of propaganda. And the news clip linked down below is another example of it within the context of this conflict going on between Israel and Hamas, or between Israel and the Palestinians, whether they be Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis or other militant groups, Islamic Jihad, that have as a stated objective the eradication of the nation state of Israel. They have as their branding statement from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free of Jews. Anyway, there's a quote that is attributed to Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens. That's his real name. Mark Twain wrote back in the 1860s, probably, he said, if you don't watch the news, you're not informed. And if you do, or rather, he wouldn't say watch, he wrote, if you don't read the news, you're not informed. And if you do read the news, you're misinformed. And Denzel Washington resurrected that old quote of Mark Twain's one. I think it was on the red carpet for the Oscars. Now getting on to the video that I've linked down below. I can't share it. Either I A, don't have the technology to share it, or conversely, maybe I do have the capability. I don't know. I just don't have the technical know-how. This is a miserable and pathetic, unmonetized little YouTube channel, just me shaking my fist at the cloud, as it were. So all I'm going to do is comment on it. It's Lester Holt is the anchor of NBC Nightly News. And to my mind, he does the job that Tom Brokaw did before him and David Brinkley before him and Walter Cronkite. News anchors are supposed to be dispassionate, just the facts. But the reporting you see, the reporting that is done, often belies that emotional detachment that the anchor expresses or that the anchor puts forth. And in this news segment down below, there's reporting on two children, apparently 8 and 15 years of age, who were reportedly engaged in conflict with IDF soldiers, Israeli Defense Force. They may be throwing rocks, maybe throwing other things, don't know. And apparently the IDF returned fire and these two children were killed, which is horrific. Where I really take exception to the reporting is the image toward the end. It's a 2-3 minute long segment. And they have the mother of one of the deceased leaning over the body of her dead child. This is the way it's presented. I've got no way to fact check it, no way to determine whether or not what is being reported is actually factual. But assuming that it is, there is a mother leaning over the body of her dead child. The face appears to have been blurred out. And she's asking, where did they hit you, my boy? Or where did they hit you, my child? And if that doesn't pull on your emotional heartstrings, you don't have a heart. It is gut-wrenching, especially to anyone who's a parent. The thought of children dying is incredibly emotional. And sadly, during war, this kind of thing happens. Now, should NBC report on it? Children die during war. It's a fact of war. However, where I take exception is in particular with that final image. That, to my mind, is gratuitous. It is meant to drive emotion. It's meant to drive engagement. The video that I'm sharing, NBC Nightly News, that channel, has 3.3 million something subscribers. That video, it's only been out a couple days. It's been viewed tens of thousands of times. And goodness knows that's just on YouTube. There's probably TikTok and Facebook versions as well. Goodness knows it. How often was it viewed during NBC's nightly newscast when the news was on TV? How many times has that segment been viewed and shared and disseminated? Goodness knows. But showing that image of the mother leaning over the body of what is reported to be her dead child is just, I do not believe that is responsible reporting. You can report the facts without tugging on the emotional heartstrings. And it speaks to the degree to which individuals, I'm being a little bit irresponsible, I think, in just posting the link down below, because it takes something that I consider to be poor, to put it mildly. I consider it to be very poor journalism, and I'm giving it a little added exposure on not much, though. This miserable channel might get this video that I'm doing right now might get 12 views, maybe 20. If I'm lucky, one of my videos, if video 1,000, I've hit 1,000 maybe 2 or 3 times, and the odd video here and there captures 100 or more. But typically my videos are viewed a dozen or 2 or 3 dozen times. But this is, you can tug on emotional heartstrings any way you want. The news has such a capacity to frame and to influence public opinion, and it's simply a matter of where they decide to shine the spotlight, where they put the focus. I think that was incredibly well exemplified during the Trump presidency. And you had CNN on the one hand and Fox on the other. And when Trump did something stupid or said something stupid, which happened, CNN would loop it so that it was coming up on their newscast every 30 minutes, every 20 minutes. And they wanted to give it maximum exposure. But if Trump did something good and positive, and he did good and positive things as well, CNN would barely cover it or ignore it completely. The reverse, of course, is Fox News. They would do the reverse. They would downplay the negatives and they would loop the positives. An example I will give is going back to the Abraham Accords, when the Trump administration was involved in the establishment of the so-called Abraham Accords, what are called the Abraham Accords, which were between the United Arab Emirates states. I believe Morocco was involved as well. So between Israel and Islamic countries, they signed something called the Abraham Accords, which established formal diplomatic ties between Israel and some Islamic states, some Islamic countries. Fox treated it like it was the greatest achievement in diplomacy in world history. Maybe not quite that bad, but close to that. And CNN conversely treated it like a nothing burger, like who cares, like this is hardly significant. The truth typically lies somewhere in between, but I think there was a lot more significance to the Abraham Accords than the CNNs of the world were willing to give Donald Trump's administration credit for. And given the conflict historically between Israel and their Islamic neighbors in the Middle East, that was a monumental achievement. And CNN treated it like it was nothing. It's just a matter of where you shine the light, where you put where news organizations put the focus. And by putting the focus in the context of the video down below on an emotional scene of a mother lying over the body of her deceased, of a child who has been killed in conflict with the Israeli Defense Force, it's obviously going to, in the eyes of a lot of people, it's going to drive sympathy toward the Palestinian cause and spur anger against Israel. And there's a tendency to decontextualize, to take things out of people forget about the broader context, and they focus in on one particular event, one particular image, one particular video. And you can't reason with an individual in an emotional state. Good luck trying. And speaking, about the COVID era, I mean, trying to, with all the images that were coming out on the news, I didn't watch much of it. I encountered it somewhat on social media. People would share these things on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. And these videos and images of more morgues with bodies piling up in Italy, or the field hospital that was set up in Central Park. And people, oh my God. And then they could not understand why someone such as myself did not have the same emotional reaction as they did. And that's the reason I didn't have the same emotional reaction as they did. And the reason I don't have the same emotional reaction as many do now with the reporting on what's going on in Israel is that I have a very negative view of the media, Canadian media, American media, certainly, because it's all about driving engagement. There's the old broadcast journalism bromide of, if it bleeds, it leads. If it's dramatic, and if it will drive an emotional response, anger, fear, disgust, if you can get an emotional response, you're going to drive engagement. And that's what news organizations are all concerned with. And the reporting on what's going on between Israel and Hamas, between Israel and the Palestinians. I mean, I've said lots on this already in my previous videos, but, I find it incredibly ironic. The more you read, the more history you learn. If you take your focus away from current events and the inflammatory images and reporting, and just try and gain a better understanding contextually of the history here. I mean, who are the Palestinian people? Well, the individuals living in the West Bank, up until 1967, those individuals were Jordanians. And as a matter of fact, Jordan maintained its claim on that occupied West Bank. They maintained their claim on that territory until 1988. I think it was June of 1988 when they formally relinquished their claim to the West Bank. There are individuals who went to bed. I think it was July 31st, 1988 was the day when Jordan formally ceded their claims to the territory of the West Bank. So individuals went to sleep on July 30th, 1988 as Jordanians. And then they woke up the following morning to find out they were Palestinians. And then you go to Gaza. And Gaza, up until 1967, was part of Egypt. So the people living in Gaza up until 1967, the Six-Day War, I think that's when was in June of 1967. I forget the exact days. I think it was the 10th, June 10th to 15th, the Six-Day War. Up until that war, Gaza was Egyptian territory. So the individuals living in Gaza were Egyptians. And then 6 days later, the war ends. Israel seizes that territory along with the Sinai Peninsula. And now these Egyptians all of a sudden become Palestinian. And then there are around 2 million people living in Israel proper, not in the occupied territories, West Bank and Gaza. Those are the occupied Palestinian territories, but who live in Israel proper. There are around 2 million individuals who are, I think the best word to describe them, they're Palestinian Arab. They're of Arab descent. But anyway, I'll end it off by saying I would be I would urge anyone to watch the news incredibly critically, to question it, to ask if this is real or not. I just saw a video shared on Twitter, which this is the claim. The claim is that this was a propaganda video put out by Hamas, and it shows a woman holding a baby who you assume to have been killed. And the claim is that the baby is actually a plastic doll, and that this video was put out for propaganda purposes. To my eye, I can't discern whether that's the body of a lifeless child or a doll. I don't know. But I consider it absolutely 100% possible that, yeah, Hamas did put out a video for propaganda purposes, and nothing drives reaction like, sadly, dead children. And it's used as a political and a propaganda tool. But at the same time, war is ugly, and this kind of thing does happen. Look at what happened on October 7th. I mean, my sympathies are decidedly on the side of Israel, but I don't claim that they're perfect, and I don't claim that mistakes aren't being made, and I don't claim that Israel is perfect. Far from it. But I look at the situation where after October 7th, when Israel declared that they were going to launch an offensive into the northern half of the Gaza Strip, they urged citizens in the Gaza Strip, in the northern half, to vacate and to move south. And I also know that, at least according to Al Jazeera, which is an Islamic news source, they're kind of the CNN of the Arab world, even Al Jazeera reported that Hamas, the governing authority in Gaza, told people not to vacate. Does Hamas use the civilian population, women and children in particular, as human shields? To my mind, of course. They're outmanned, they're outgunned, and so there's a logic to it, a sick, twisted, perverse logic, but logic nonetheless. If Hamas was to engage in what I'll call a fair fight, where let's come out and meet each other on the field of battle, Hamas would be destroyed. So instead, they embed themselves near hospitals, schools, refugee camps, and then they're almost in a no-lose situation. Because if Israel doesn't attack, they win. And if Israel does attack, it's going to result in civilian casualties and the death of women and children, and then you can win the propaganda war. So I'll end it off by saying, be circumspect, be cynical, ask questions, think critically. Don't assume that what the news says, especially the NBC's, CBS's, ABC's, CNN's of the world, or in Canada, CBC, CTV Global. Don't assume that their reporting is factual. They are trying to drive engagement. They're trying to generate clicks and views and advertising dollars, the same as any other business. So God bless. I'll end it there. You can like, you can subscribe. Always appreciated. Comments are welcome, as always, and I try to respond to all comments. So we'll talk to you again in the days to come. Night all.